Welcome to Backstage Church, where real people having real conversations. I'm Nick.
I'm Chris.
I'm PK.
And we are going to be, it's been a hot minute since we've been around, but we're going to be coming back, going to bring things together for you guys, and we are going to really break down, do a whole kind of series, season type thing, and we are going to really break down that 1 Corinthians 13.
Easy for you to say.
What we call what I call the wedding chapter. That's the wedding verse. That is, I think that's the most used wedding verse.
I mean, I know I've been in church my whole life, but I only know that scripture because they featured it on an episode of The Office. So.
but we want to talk about that. You got to be patient with us, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. Is that love is patient.
Yeah.
So before we can even really go into like love, let's talk about patience. What is patience? What's patience for you guys?
Well, patience is letting the other person finish their sentence without interrupting with your opinion.
Wait, what was that?
What?
Wait, I was supposed to wait and finish.
Yeah. You way to illustrate a lack of patience.
This is going to be a long day. I can see that already. No. What is patience? Patience is just being willing to me, it's being willing to let other people have the spotlight and not feeling the need to have to interject and all those kinds of things. I think, at least for me, it is, which is tough for me. So.
I'm going to leave extra space after you talk this whole time to make sure you're finished, so I'm not interrupting you.
Well, that's a good thing. I appreciate that, Chris.
Yeah, I think patience really works on a lot of levels. You know, it's so often today in our world we want to have discussions and disagreements with people, and we want resolution immediately. We want it to be done right now. So when we're talking about patience with people and regarding to love is patient, I think it means allowing people to think differently than you and being patient with them as they're wrestling with issues, or even if you're seeing things from a different point of view. Patience is saying, hey, I'm going to let you talk, I'm going to let you process, and I'm not going to jump to a conclusion or jump to an opinion about you based on the fact you're taking longer to work through this than I would prefer.
So those are all good. My biggest thing with patience, especially when you have to deal with young ones and other people, is you have to wait with the expectation that they're going to be coming around, and that expectation isn't just you just expecting it to happen, but you are actually ever so diligently, persistently working your way around to help them see that light. So like when I'm patient with my kids, I'm going to let them talk, I'm going to have their say, but I'm also going to make sure that I persistently say the same thing over and over again, persistently keep going through that, not getting frustrated that they're not seeing it my way, but really able to really push forward and persistently, diligently work so that way they can start understanding why they have to clean their room, or why they have to brush their teeth at night, or why they have to go to bed. It was one of the big ones in my household.
That should be a video topic in and of itself, because sleep is so important. But no, so you're basically saying because you love them, when they don't get it right away, you're going to be patient to repeat yourself and be willing to put in the work to be understood, even though, you theoretically have the right to be like, son, I already told you to clean your room. Son, I already told you that you have to use the toilet when you go to the bathroom. You're going to put in the work to continue to teach because you love your children, rather than just saying, I already told you, I can't believe. You know what? You're never leaving the house. You're never leaving the room. You're just gonna wear a diaper your entire life. Like you're patient because you love.
Yes. I think that expectation is that persistence is very important, because without that, can we really truly say that we have patience?
Well, I think too, patience is also the ability, for me at least, to try to put myself in somebody else's shoes.
That's good.
Like you go to, like we went to lunch today.
Yeah.
And the waitress, she was doing good, made a couple of mistakes or whatever. And you know, you could very easily, because how many times have you been to a restaurant and you see some patron go off on the server? I mean, just go off for something really ridiculously stupid. And or you're in the line at the grocery store and the cashier or whatever makes a mistake and whatever, and we're just kind of, oh man, this is taking up my time and everything, and we want to get upset with somebody. And the reality is, many times patience is just simply putting ourselves in that other person's shoes.
Right.
We don't know what they've been through that day. Mm-hmm. We don't know what they're going through in their life. We don't know whether they've had their day has been just the day from heaven or just the opposite.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times patience for us is because, at least for me, it's that I'm very, okay, let's get this done. Let's move. I got places to go, people to see, things to do.
Right.
Without even giving it any thought to what has that person been through? Mm-hmm. What kind of crap have they had to deal with on this particular day and this particular moment? How do I know that they're not dealing with a broken marriage? How do I know that they're not dealing with rebellious kids? How do I know they're not dealing with kids that have, at least from medical science's perspective, an incurable disease?
Right.
How do I know? How do I know that they're not just one missed paycheck away from losing all that they've got?
Yeah.
And I think in that sense, because we're talking about all of these things, we have to understand that what we're trying to do is put feet on the word love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right? And I think in order to really understand all this aspect from verse 4 down, we've got to catch the very beginning of what Paul says. And I just want to read that right here because it's powerful stuff, really, when you think about it. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men and angels, but I have not love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Really what he's saying is, I'm saying nothing.
Right.
I'm saying nothing. Verse 2, he says, and if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I don't have love, I am nothing. So in other words, you can be the greatest thing since sliced bread in the church world or whatever the case may be, but if you don't have just common, everyday, common sense love for people and respect for people, it's nothing. And then he goes on to say, he says, and if I give all that I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. In other words, love is the whole motivation behind everything that we do, whether it's in ministry, whether it's in how we speak, whether it's in charity. It's all about motivation. So, how can we say we have love, but yet we're impatient with people? And they get our order wrong. They get they hit the wrong key and they charge the wrong price for something, or whatever the case may be. And even as parents, Nick, you talked about your children. We have to, as parents, we have to understand where are our kids going to learn what patience is. Mm-hmm. It cracks me up when parents, I don't know why. Where did you ever get that? And it's like, go look in the mirror. You'll see where they got it from.
Right.
And I can say the same thing for me. You sit there, you get aggravated at your kid about something, and then all of a sudden you think and you go, yow, they've seen me and heard me do the same thing. So I think from that standpoint, I think patience, for me at least, is that ability. And man, it's so stinking hard to put yourself in the shoes of that other person. Yeah. And try to see life from their perspective.
That's so good. I mean, really, so much of love, so much of Christianity really is about prioritizing people over our preferences, over our expectations. And when you talk about, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, we do tend to only think about our circumstances and our schedule and what we're going on. And that's that could be a whole different path of conversation, right? Because so many times God is leading us to go and love someone, and we're like, nah, I don't have time for that. Yep. And we got to prioritize God's purposes over our schedule. But that is love. That is patience. That is what we're called to do. We're called to prioritize people over our schedule, and we do get zeroed in on what is important to us right now. And it's hard sometimes to lay down our own ideas, our own preferences, our own expectations to prioritize other people. But again, so much of Christianity, what we're called to do as followers of Jesus, what Jesus taught, is really all about loving people and putting people above even our own preferences and ourselves.
So, I mean, I've seen our own personal lives, and PK had mentioned this about, the people who are immediately around us.
Yeah.
Kids, people who serve us, whether it's at the grocery store or at the restaurant, dry cleaners, all that stuff. What about people who are in leadership? Politics is always going to be a big thing where how can you have that patience for the president, for the governors, for the people who are going to do laws that you clearly do not agree with?
Yeah, that's impossible. So next question.
That's impossible to have the patience.
I think in that sense, let's just be honest here in this forum. For those that are watching and you live in the state of Michigan, where we've been going with our governor, and regardless of where you stand on her politics and party affiliation, all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't want the woman's job to save my life, right, during this whole thing, to have to try to navigate that, to have the numbers of myriads of people that are chirping in her ears constantly about what she should do, what she shouldn't do. And I really don't think that that our governor is just some monster from the pit somewhere whose whole purpose in life since she was born was to make everybody else in the state miserable. It just doesn't happen that way. She's really trying, I think, to navigate, although I'll be the first one to say, let me get this on record. No, I do not agree with everything, and probably a lot of the stuff she's done I don't agree with. Let me just get that out there, so I don't want any kind of emails or texts or anything on that kind of stuff. But at the same time, patience requires us as believers to put ourselves in that, and put ourselves in our mind's eye in her position and say, really, can we honestly say that we would have done it differently if we were under the same pressures that she was under? And honestly, I don't know that I could say that. I'd like to think I could.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's always 20/20.
Sure, exactly. And so I think from that standpoint, that's that whole thing of putting yourself in their position.
Right.
It's easy to throw stones, and it's easy to contradict, and it's easy to put down when we're not the ones dealing with the pressure of having to make the decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where patience has to. Can you imagine Jesus with the disciples? For Pete's sake, man, just because one town didn't want to listen to him, they were ready to call down fire on the town, and Jesus looked at him and said, boys, you don't even have a clue what spirit you're of right now,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or, well, they must have been really bad sinners, or that tower wouldn't have fell on them and killed them. And Jesus said, really?
Yep.
Really? You really think that they're worse sinners than you are because the tower fell on them? And I think Jesus was trying to get people. Jesus didn't he didn't equivocate. He did not, lower the standard, but he created an aspect to the standard that hopefully will give us perspective.
Right. And I think, I'm in a position where I don't know that I particularly agree with the governor or the president. So, hey, whatever. But either way, we have to respect the position.
Right.
And while we might disagree, and it's so easy to let that anger, that frustration, the offense, for lack of a better term, come in towards decisions they're making or things they're doing that you don't agree with. At the end of the day, we kind of need to learn to relinquish a little bit of the passion over things that we don't have any agency toward. I think part of what's fueling so many things is we spend all this time thinking and focusing on things that we have no control over,
right.
no power over, and work ourselves into it tizzy. And so we need to have patience with leadership, but just as important, maybe more challenging, is having patience with people who have differing perspectives of the leadership than you do. That's when struggle.
Well, it's really funny too, because every time I think about it, which is really funny, this is the second one, is you have to always pair that patience with kindness.
So love is patient.
Because you can't, it's hard to maintain patience if you're, you can't be patient with someone if you're not going to be kind to them. It's just not really that, not possible, because you're going to get frustrated, you're going to want to throw something, you're going to want to post something on social media, you're going to want to call them something that they're not supposed to be called, you're going to want to do something. Because patience in of itself, unless you're working towards an end, like me working towards making sure that my kids become full function members of society. And I know that there's going to be an end in sight. There's going to be an end where I've done all that I can, and they're
Yes.
that's going to be what it is. But the patience of trying to get my kids to respect and listen for the rest of their lives, that creates a whole nother set of, okay, how can I be kind to them now? Not just so I can make them functional as adults and move out and move away, but so they stay connected to me and the family.
Yeah.
I think that there's a part of it where we have to be patient, but we also have to make sure that even if we can't understand, even if we put ourselves in their shoes, and we have no like in the president or governor, I'm never going to meet these people in person.
Right.
I'm never going to see them. Some days I wish I would, but even if I did, it's not like they're going to listen to me and say, "Oh, we should be friends now, and you can kind of talk to my ear every day." There's a part where I just have to be. Well, I have to be patient and assume that they have more information than I do. And then I have to be kind to say, you know what, no matter what happens, let's be kind to them. How can we, is there a way, an easier way for us to extend that kindness out to even people we don't even know, we haven't even met, as well as the people who we are in our lives every day?
Yeah. Well, I think that thing that you said, how Paul pairs patience with kindness. Love is patient. Love is kind. And I'll confess, I'm a Downton Abbey freak. I love Downton Abbey. My wife and I, a good idea of a good time is we were up north on vacation. It was raining the whole time, so we binge watched the entire 5 seasons of Downton Abbey.
Wow!
But if you'll notice, there's one word that they use constantly about people, and that was, well, they're kind. That's so kind, that type of thing. And I think, when you were talking about your kids, and this just struck me, many times we won't remember what somebody said to us, but we will remember the attitude and the tone with which they said it.
That's good, yeah.
Which is the kindness aspect of it. You can, like I said, there's so many things that my dad said to me. Some of them I can repeat, and some of them no, because I was being really bad, and he had a right to to say what he said to me, but my dad was always kind.
Wow.
And I mean, my dad was kind to so many. I mean, he got angry about stuff, but he was always kind to people. And like I said, I can't always remember everything that he said.
Yeah.
I wish looking back over my life, I wished I could have had a tape recorder and recorded everything that he said.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I can't remember everything he said, but I can remember how he said it. And so, Nick, that is so powerful, especially with your kids. You really think, Andrew and Alex are going to remember everything that you say? You'd like to think so.
No, I like to think they're going to make fun of me when I get older.
Oh yeah, they will. Oh, I remember when Dad yelled at you. Yeah. But hopefully they will always remember the tone.
Yeah.
With what you said it, which is the kindness aspect of it. And I think that's where Jesus and that's where Paul is getting that patience ultimately. Patience is always linked to kindness.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful thing, especially in the day and the age in which we're living now, with all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I've heard it said people won't remember everything you say. They won't remember everything you do, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing, just a different verbiage. But it's absolutely true. And I think that patience is completely linked with kindness. And I think that a lack of patience is clearly linked with unkindness.
Yeah.
When we are losing patience with people, we do not treat them well. We don't treat them kindly. Just get inside of any person's car and hear the things that come out of them when they're stuck in traffic or the person in front of them is driving like a bozo. That's a clown.
It might be deserved. It might be deserved.
Yeah. But. Right? I mean, if I'm having a great day, then the things that come out of my mouth are, I have a lot more patience and I'm not bothered, and I'll say kind things. But man, the few days, when I'm just like stressed or I'm mad because I know I'm going to be 2 minutes late for where I'm supposed to be, my patience is gone, and I'm not kind. And it's just such a connection. And, whether you're talking politics, everyday life, dealing with difficult people, children, people in the church or whatever, patience helps us be kind. Lack of patience is unkind. And we really need to watch ourselves and learn to recognize how we're responding, recognize our level of patience. And if we can learn to recognize when we're starting to lose patience, then we can begin to make adjustments and remember that how we treat people is so important. And if we're losing patience and we sense that, then we can stop. I promise you, if we're losing patience, the people we're interacting with can probably tell. Yeah. And the way we're making them feel is now being downgraded. So we have to be aware of our patience level and our kindness level.
Yeah. Because I mean, you can, you can tell. You know when you're, we want to try. Oh man, I didn't realize. Oh yeah, you did, or you wouldn't have done it that way. Come on, tell the truth and shame the devil. Now, come on, and it's kind of like that way where we know whether it's with our spouses or with close friends or coworkers,
right?
Or that individual that just has the ability to get under your skin, and those are the ones. It's easy to be kind to kind people.
True.
Mm-hmm. It's easy to be patient with patient people. It's where the rub comes in is when you're dealing with unkind, impatient people, and we think, for some reason, we think we can be justified in responding in like manner. And I think that's that was the biggest thing that Jesus did not do. When you think about all the stories of the people he encountered, where other people were just getting all over him and all over that person, Jesus had a way of just turning that around and showing the patience and the kindness of the Lord that had the ability to change people's lives.
Yeah.
Everybody else hated Zacchaeus. Right. He was probably the most hated man in town. But because Jesus said, hey, dude, I'm coming to your house for dinner, it changed everything for Zacchaeus.
Yeah.
It changed everything. The woman caught in adultery, because Jesus said, where's your accusers? Well, there's nobody here. Well, I'm not accusing you either.
Yeah.
Go and sin no more. And those instances like that, the power of those. The power of those are and I wish, I'm sitting here saying this stuff and in my head I'm hearing, why don't you start doing some of that stuff,
Right.
And it's like, I wish, because it's extremely difficult, but I believe that's why Paul puts this in that these are aspects of the Spirit of the Lord at work within us.
Yeah.
And that as we yield ourselves to the Holy Spirit, we are able to be what we wouldn't normally be.
Yeah.
In our own strength and our own imaginations. And I think that's the fruit of the love or fruit of the Spirit is what? What's the first one?
Love.
So what's Paul talking about? Love. Okay. So that whole thing, and love is love is patient, love is kind. Fruit of the Spirit is love, humility, meekness, kindness. All those different things. And I think that's it. That as we allow the Holy Spirit to work in our lives, those things are going to be demonstrated in greater measure the more we yield to that.
Yes.
So,
I love that you started talking about treating people with kindness who are not kind, because I think about Jesus' teaching, pray for your enemies, love those who don't love you back. And that's the kind of teaching that it's easy to jump on and be like, yes, you need to pray for your enemies. When someone else has an enemy, that's advice that we're going to give. You got to pray for your enemy. You got to love them even though they don't love you. But all of a sudden, when someone starts acting in your life as an enemy, whether it's intentional or not, that you're coming up against opposition, and it's like, well, the last thing I want to do is pray for that person. Yeah. I mean, legitimately pray for them? What? Hang on, that's not what Jesus meant. Then we start justifying and we start going all around our minds, all the reasons why they just need to get over themselves and get up off me. And it's like, okay, hang on. Am I going to be a Christian when it's convenient? Am I going to love when it's convenient? Or am I going to obey Jesus all the time? Especially when it's difficult. Is it really obedience if it's not difficult, right? Like it's yielding my will to the will of the Spirit and surrendering what I want to do, which is fight. And instead, you know what? I'm going to humble myself and I'm going to pray. I'm going to do the difficult thing. And when I begin to surrender, now I'm genuinely beginning to love like Jesus loved.
Now, I do want to add a slight caveat here, because a lot of times we confuse kindness with niceness, or kindness and patience with being wishy-washy, or not being able to stand up for what we believe in, or not being, we view it as being weak, really. And in this patience, this kindness is not that at all. It's not that we have to tell the other person, "Oh yeah, you're right," even though we think that they're wrong.
Right.
We can. I mean, I love my kids, but my kids can tell you, I am not a weak person. They don't see me as someone who's just going to cave when they ask me something.
Right.
My wife doesn't see me as a weak person. I don't just cave whenever she asks me something. There is a definite, and she does this with me as well, and we do it to each other to help make sure that we both go in the same way. There is a persistence of wearing the other person down, not to manipulate them, but to get them to do what's best for them. So I think one of the things that I can think of the other person's like, well, you're all just this mamby-pamby, love only, hold hands and kumbaya type Christians.
I don't want to hold hands.
Well, I guess we can't in this day and age, not in our state,
okay.
I got my meds.
But this kindness is in this patience is actually more active than what we give it credit for. It's not just, I'm just going to sit back and not say anything because I disagree. But you can reword your things to where it's kind, but still gets your opinion across. Instead of calling the other person an idiot, or in the Bible, if we want to use raka, you fool,
Right.
Instead of calling them out, you can say, I don't agree with that statement, and here's why. And so now you're not attacking the person. You're saying the argument I think is invalid, is you're still being kind to the person and still actually going through the actual issue.
Right.
Yeah, it goes down to kind of the motivation behind the conversation.
Yeah.
If we're just offended and we come at them with like, why do you think that? What's wrong with you? You moron, or, okay, well, we have a disagreement. Help me understand the reasons for that opinion that you hold. And, really listen to someone. That's love. Love is listening to someone.
Yeah.
Maybe even when you don't want to. Love seeks to understand, not to attack.
Yeah. I think too, it's not in that you disagree, it's how you disagree.
Ooh.
The concept of we're just going to have to agree to disagree agreeably. That I don't have to cave in. I have my thoughts, I have my standards, I have my ethics, I have all of those things, and I may not agree with how you're doing something.
Yeah.
I don't have the power to change your thoughts, but I do have the power over how I choose to approach that.
Right.
How I choose to approach you. How that even though we disagree, hopefully, if you and I were having a disagreement over something that, hopefully it's not as big as what Paul and Barnabas had, with John Mark, but the reality is that hopefully we may not ever agree on a particular issue.
Sure.
But hopefully we can walk away with a greater respect for one another.
Yeah.
And how we disagreed.
Yeah.
And I think that right there is the whole patience thing. I don't have a problem when people disagree with me politically or in any other way.
Right.
It's when, because I don't disagree, they resort to calling names. They resort to basically character assassination.
Because you don't agree.
Right, because we don't agree. And because they don't agree with my standpoint, or I don't agree with theirs. When we have to resort to that,
good.
Then we've just taken it down. We've lost the respect of people. And the idea being that you can have your opinion and I don't agree with it. I can have my opinion. You don't agree with it.
Right.
But the reality is that I respect you. It's like my children. Okay, my kids. They've got grandkids. Now I would not even begin to kid anybody to think that I agree with how my children choose to discipline their kids all the time. I'm old school. And I'm gonna yank a knot in their tail, man. That's what they need, type of deal. But they choose to do it a different way. I don't agree with that. But yet what I do have to do is, even though I may not agree with it, I have to honor their right and their prerogative as the parents of those children.
Sure.
And the second thing I have to do is I have to look at the fruit and how they're dealing with it.
Yeah.
And if it's producing good fruit, then how can I argue against it?
Sure.
You know, and I think that's an aspect and a component of patience. We may not agree with how somebody does it or how they think or what their thought processes are, but the reality is you have to look at the fruit of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they just may be taking a different route to get to the same place. It may take them a little bit longer. They may be going all the way to Chicago just to get to Detroit. But the reality is that you know they're getting to the same place.
Right.
May not be the way we would do it. That's okay.
Yeah. For me, the difficulty is no matter how hard we try, we cannot control other people.
Yeah.
We can't control the way they think. We can't control the way they speak. The only thing we have control over is ourselves. And that's a whole different fruit of the Spirit, right? But sometimes we struggle in that area.
Yeah.
But we absolutely can control how we respond to people. And when we find someone who disagrees with us or holds a belief that's different than ours, and our first instinct is to rise up and an offense, and out of that offense causing us to attack them or say things in a way that certainly is unkind, we need to step back and say, okay, you know, how can I take control of myself? I can't control them and what they say or speak or do, but how can I take control of myself and respond in a way that is representative of love and patience and in kindness, and ultimately representative of Jesus?
What, you mean there's not a fruit of the Spirit of other control?
Unfortunately, no. If someone discovers that, shout at me.
Wow.
I just find it really funny that in church culture, Paul is this high up figure in church culture. And honestly, I don't disagree with that. I mean, he wrote most of our New Testament. He had some great insight. He studied the Word. He did that great. Paul had the most amount of controversies among the disciples in the early church than anybody. Mm-hmm. Paul has been beaten up. Paul and James, I think, got into a fight on the temple steps. Paul and Barnabas had it out. Paul completely wore out John Mark and sent John Mark back because he was a whiny baby. Paul and Peter went at it a couple times. Paul fought with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that he can sit here and say, you know what? While I fought with all of them, I can tell you this. I still have love for them and love for the church. And I still want all of them to succeed. And then even to the point where John Mark got better, goes, okay, now send John Mark back to me. I heard you fix him up. Send him back. And then John Mark's probably like, no, don't do that. I don't want to do that again. The fact that the person who came with the most controversy of coming into the church and how he came to the church and how he worked within the church is the one who's saying, who was just basically telling us through this chapter how no matter what, he always viewed the church as a whole with love, and the people who ran it as love. He didn't call them dingbats and worse words. He just was like, you know what? I still love them and respect them no matter what. Yeah. While we're gonna fight, we're gonna disagree, we're gonna throw down. I can still love them.
Yeah. I think too that's, you know, and I've heard so many people make, because of where 1 Corinthians 13 fits between chapter 12 and chapter 14, dealing with the gifts of the Spirit and the operations of the Spirit in the church, that love is the thing that holds it all together. Yeah. And you know, the concept of, once again, getting back to patience in that, is that, you know, dealing with people that are, whether they're spiritually less mature or we think they're spiritually less mature than us, or whether they think that they're spiritually more mature than us. You know, it's a matter of patience and being able to deal with that. And even because it's interesting, you know, Paul and Barnabas over John Mark. I mean, Paul and Barnabas came to blows, and they had to agree to disagree agreeably. And you know, Paul took Silas and Barnabas took John Mark. But through all of that, the real miracle wasn't so much that Paul had love for John Mark later on. It was the fact that he had to finally come to the point where he actually agreed with Barnabas. He had to come to a point of agreement and say, you know what, I was wrong about the boy. and had to admit that to himself and then tell him to come because he's profitable to me for the ministry. And I think that's that way for most of us.
Yeah.
Well, we it's this battle of who's right. I'm right, you're wrong. You're this, I'm that. And I can tell you right now, there are so many things that I was so dogmatic about early on in my walk with the Lord and early on in the ministry that over the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've totally changed my viewpoint. And I've had to people that I pointed a finger at, an accusatory finger, and said, "You're wrong. You're off the wall. You've messed up. You're a heretic." And all this kind of stuff. I've had to come back and basically, although I haven't seen any of them face to face to have to ask their forgiveness, I've had to ask God to forgive me because all of a sudden my whole mindset has changed. And I think that's kind of where patience takes us. Is that we're willing to look at things through a different lens and see people differently than what they first appear, and that's hard.
Yeah, and I love that you just openly say over the last several years I've changed in opinions as I've grown in knowledge and I've learned and as God's led me, and that's I think a big reason why we're having these conversations and why Backstage Church is so important. We have to be willing to look at things that we've held in our lives and beliefs that we've had and be willing to question and evaluate, is this really what Scripture says? Because the reality is we can know things our entire lives that are actually incorrect just because culturally is what we were taught and trained up, and we really need to study Scripture and see what God has to say on these things. So I love that we're doing this. I love that we're having these conversations, and I love that we're talking about loving people through patience and kindness.
So that's well said.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's going to be all for today for this video. If in the comments there, write down how you can be more patient and be more kind to the people who are in your life and some examples that you can do. We would love to read them and to get to know kind of what's going on in your life. And it can be encouragement for somebody else as well. So write that down in the comments, as well as if you're getting benefit out of these talks, subscribe, hit the notification bell, so we can do that. We're gonna continue on through this 1 Corinthians 13 chapter in the next video. So thank you guys so much, and you have a lovely day.